The year was 2147, and Earth had finally reached the stars. For decades, humanity dreamed of exploring space, and now that dream had become a reality. Colonies on Mars were thriving, mining operations in the asteroid belt brought wealth to Earth, and distant moons held promise for new homes. But with every step forward came unexpected challenges. Humanity's rapid expansion into the galaxy caught the attention of others, who were not pleased. It began without warning. One day, Earth's skies shimmered with an eerie glow. At first, people thought it was some kind of aurora or perhaps a rare alignment of planets. But as hours passed, the glow intensified, forming a massive dome of light around the planet. It wasn't just above one region, it covered all of Earth. The barrier stretched from pole to pole, sealing humanity inside like prisoners in their own home. Scientists scrambled to understand what was happening. Governments convened emergency meetings. News outlets broadcast endless streams of speculation. No one knew where the barrier had come from or why. Then a message arrived. It wasn't spoken aloud, but felt directly in the minds of every person on Earth. The voice was cold, emotionless, and vast, as if it belonged to something far older than humanity. You have been deemed a threat to galactic stability, the voice said. Your reckless expansion endangers the balance of life across the stars. This veil will contain you until your species demonstrates responsibility or perishes. The message ended as suddenly as it began, leaving billions stunned and terrified. The veil, as the barrier came to be called, wasn't just a prison. It was draining Earth's atmosphere. Sensors detected a slow but steady loss of oxygen. If nothing was done, Earth would become uninhabitable within weeks. Panic erupted worldwide. Riots broke out in cities. Refugees fled coastal areas, fearing the worst. Leaders argued over how to respond, but no solution seemed possible against such overwhelming power. Amidst the chaos, Daniel Carter sat alone in his lab at the Global Space Research Institute. He stared at the glowing data screens before him, his mind racing. Daniel was a brilliant engineer, known for solving problems no one else could. Yet even he struggled to comprehend the enormity of what faced them. His dark hair was disheveled, his face pale from lack of sleep. Coffee cups littered. His desk, evidence of countless sleepless nights spent searching for answers. Daniel wasn't working alone. Across the room, Rachel Monroe leaned over another workstation, her fingers flying across a keyboard. Rachel was an astrophysicist, sharp-witted and driven. Her blonde hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her green eyes reflected both determination and fear. She glanced up at Daniel occasionally, silently urging him to keep going despite the odds. What do we know so far? Daniel asked, breaking the tense silence. Rachel sighed. Not much. The veil is made of energy unlike anything we've seen before. It's blocking all communication signals, including radio waves and satellites, and the atmospheric depletion. It's accelerating faster than predicted. Daniel nodded grimly. We need to find a way to break through it, or at least slow down the process. But how? Rachel replied. This isn't some human-made technology. Whoever created the Kryn, they're light years ahead of us. The Kryn, that was the name given to the mysterious beings who had imposed the veil. Their motives remained unclear, but their actions spoke volumes. They viewed humanity as dangerous, unpredictable, a species that needed to be controlled. Daniel clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath his calm exterior. He refused to accept defeat. There had to be a way to fight back. Over the next few days, Daniel and Rachel pored over fragments of alien technology recovered near the edges of the veil. These artifacts had been discovered by reconnaissance teams sent to study the barrier. Most of the pieces were useless shards, but a few contained traces of advanced circuitry and energy signatures. Daniel believed they might hold the key to dismantling the veil. One evening, while analyzing a particularly promising fragment, Rachel noticed something unusual. Daniel, look at this, she said, pointing to a series of patterns etched into the metal. These markings, they're repeating sequences? Could they be instructions? Daniel leaned closer, studying the symbols. Maybe they're warnings. He paused, then added, "Either way, we can use them." As they worked, news filtered in about rising tensions around the world. Some nations advocated surrender, hoping the Kryn would lift the veil if humanity proved compliant. Others called for resistance, arguing that giving up would mean the end of freedom. Protests erupted in major cities and armed conflicts broke out between factions with opposing views. The situation grew increasingly dire. Despite the turmoil outside, Daniel and Rachel focused on their task. They assembled a team of experts to help analyze the alien tech. Among them was Alex Turner, a former Marine turned strategist. Alex had served in multiple off-world conflicts and understood the importance of staying calm under pressure. His presence brought a sense of order to the chaotic lab. Also joining the team was Claire Bennett, a robotics expert with a knack for thinking outside the box. Claire had designed cutting-edge drones used in deep space exploration, and her skills proved invaluable when it came to reverse engineering the alien artifacts. Quiet and reserved, she often worked late into the night, tinkering with ideas others dismissed as impossible. Together, the team pieced together a plan. Using the alien fragments as a blueprint, they began constructing a device capable of disrupting the Veil's energy field. They called it ZEUS for Zero Energy Universal. Saboteur. The name was fitting as the device operated on principles beyond conventional physics. Instead of relying on traditional power sources, ZEUS harnessed ambient energy from its surroundings, amplifying it to create a concentrated burst capable of destabilizing the Veil. Progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. Supplies were limited, and the constant drain on Earth's resources made every experiment risky. Morale among the team fluctuated, especially as reports of worsening conditions outside the lab grew more frequent. Families were torn apart. Food shortages led to riots. The sky above grew darker each day as the Veil continued to sap Earth's atmosphere. One night, after another failed test, Daniel found himself alone in the lab. Rachel had gone home hours earlier, exhausted from the relentless pace. Claire was asleep in a corner, curled up on a makeshift cot. Only Alex remained, pacing quietly near the entrance. "You should get some rest," Alex said, noticing Daniel staring blankly at the prototype lying on the workbench. "I can't," Daniel replied. "Every second we waste is another step." Closer to the end, Alex stopped pacing and looked at him. "You're pushing yourself too hard? You'll burn out before we even finish." Daniel shook his head. "If I stop, we all die. My sister. She didn't make it when the Veil first appeared. I won't let anyone else suffer the same fate." Alex hesitated, then nodded. "Just remember, you're not alone in this. We're with you, no matter what." The words brought a flicker of comfort to Daniel, though he couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He returned to his workbench, determined to push forward. Somewhere in the jumble of wires, circuits, and alien components lay the answer they desperately needed. All they had to do was find it. Days blurred into nights as the team worked tirelessly. Slowly but surely, ZEUS began taking shape. Its design was sleek yet functional, a blend of human ingenuity and alien innovation. Though far from perfect, it represented hope, a chance to reclaim their future. But as the final pieces fell into place, strange occurrences began plaguing the lab. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Power surges fried delicate instruments. Whispers echoed through the corridors, faint and distorted, as if someone or something was watching them. Some members of the team whispered about sabotage, while others feared the Kryn were somehow influencing events from beyond the Veil. Daniel tried to ignore the unease creeping into his thoughts. He reminded himself that paranoia wouldn't solve anything. What mattered was finishing ZEUS and using it to save humanity. Whatever forces were arrayed against them, he vowed to stand firm. Little did he know, the true challenge was only beginning. The lab buzzed with activity as Daniel Carter and his team worked around the clock to complete ZEUS. The device sat on a central workbench, its sleek design a mix of human engineering and alien technology. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting it to power sources and diagnostic tools. Despite its unfinished state, ZEUS already hummed faintly, as if alive and waiting to be unleashed. For Daniel, every second counted. The veil was tightening its grip on Earth, and time was slipping away faster than anyone wanted to admit. Rachel Monroe stood nearby, her eyes scanning lines of code on a monitor. She adjusted her glasses, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We're close," she said, though her voice carried a hint of doubt. "But close isn't good enough. If we make one mistake with this, it could backfire." Daniel nodded but didn't look up from his work. His hands moved quickly, soldering wires and testing circuits. "We don't have a choice," he replied. "If we don't try, we're done for anyway." Claire Bennett sat at another station, her fingers dancing over a keyboard as she fine-tuned the programming for ZEUS's core. Her calm demeanor masked the stress she felt. She glanced at the clock on the wall and sighed. "It's not just about finishing it," she said softly. "We need to figure out how to deploy it. The veil doesn't exactly have a door we can knock on." Alex Turner leaned against a nearby table, arms crossed. He had been watching the team work for hours, offering advice when needed but mostly staying out of their way. "Deploying it won't be easy," he admitted. "Even if we get ZEUS working, getting it close enough to the veil without being torn apart is another story." Daniel paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Then we'll find a way. We'll use drones or shields, whatever it takes." "The Kryn aren't going to stop us." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? They've got ships, weapons, and tech we can't even imagine. What makes you think they'll let us near the veil?" "Because they underestimate us," Daniel shot back. "They think we're just scared animals trapped in a cage. But we're more than that. We adapt, we survive." Rachel turned away from her screen, her expression serious. "Surviving isn't enough, Daniel. We need to win. And winning means understanding what we're up against. Have you thought about why they're doing this? Why seal Earth away instead of destroying it outright?" Daniel hesitated. He hadn't considered that question much. All he knew was that the veil was killing Earth and he wouldn't stand by while billions suffocated. But Rachel had a point. The Kryn's actions seemed calculated, almost surgical. Was there more to their plan than met the eye? Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the room, growing louder by the second. Claire jumped to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice tight with alarm. "It's the equipment," Rachel said, rushing to check the monitors. "Something's interfering with the power supply." The hum turned into a sharp whine, and sparks erupted from one of the machines connected to ZEUS. Daniel grabbed a fire extinguisher and aimed it at the smoking device, his heart pounding. "Shut it down," he shouted. "Now!" Claire's fingers flew over her keyboard as she tried to cut the power. The whining stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Everyone exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the first time strange malfunctions had occurred, but it was getting worse. "We're being watched," Alex said flatly, breaking the quiet. "I don't know how or why, but someone or something is messing with us." Rachel frowned. "Do you think it's the Kryn?" "I don't see who else it could be," Alex replied. "Maybe they're trying to scare us off." "Or maybe they're testing us," Claire suggested. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her fear. "Testing whether we'll keep going or give up." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Well, they picked the wrong group to mess with. We're not giving up." Despite his determination, the incident left everyone shaken. Work resumed cautiously, with extra safeguards put in place to prevent further disruptions. But the sense of unease lingered. Like a shadow over the lab, days passed and progress on ZEUS continued. The team faced new challenges daily, from recalibrating unstable energy outputs to troubleshooting glitches in the programming. Each hurdle pushed them closer to exhaustion, but none of them dared to slow down. Outside the lab, conditions on Earth were deteriorating rapidly. Food shortages led to riots in major cities. Refugees crowded underground shelters, desperate for safety. Reports flooded in of entire regions succumbing to toxic air. The veil's grip tightened with each passing hour, one evening after another. "Long day of work," Rachel approached Daniel. He was hunched over a desk, scribbling notes on a piece of paper. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his shoulders sagged with fatigue. Rachel placed a hand on his arm. "You need to rest," she said gently. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Daniel shook his head. "I can't, not yet. There's too much to do." "You're pushing yourself too hard," Rachel insisted. "This isn't just your burden to carry. We're all in this together." Her words struck a chord. Daniel looked up at her, his gaze softening. "I know, but every time I close my eyes I see my sister. She didn't deserve to die. Like that, none of us do." Rachel squeezed his arm. "And we won't, not if we stick together. Trust us to help you, Daniel. That's what teams are for." For the first time in days, Daniel allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. He nodded, exhaling deeply. "Okay, you're right. I'll take a break soon." As promised, Daniel eventually forced himself to step away from the project. He joined the others in the makeshift break area, where Alex was sharing stories from his military days. Claire listened intently, laughing at his jokes despite the tension hanging over them. Even in the darkest moments, laughter found a way to shine through. Later that night, Rachel stayed behind to review data from the latest tests. As she sifted through the information, something caught her eye, a pattern buried deep within the readings. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably artificial. Her pulse quickened as she realized what it meant. "Daniel!" She called, her voice urgent. "You need to see this." Daniel hurried over, his exhaustion forgotten. "What is it?" Rachel pointed to the screen. "These fluctuations, they're not random. They're messages. Someone's communicating with us." "Communicating?" Daniel echoed, leaning closer. "From where?" "The veil," Rachel replied. "Whoever or whatever is controlling it is reaching out." Daniel's mind raced. Could it be the Kryn? Or was there something else beyond the veil, something they hadn't considered? Whatever the source, the message was clear. Humanity's fate hung in the balance, and the answers lay hidden within the veil itself. With renewed urgency, the team focused on deciphering the mysterious signals. Claire developed algorithms to analyze the patterns, while Rachel cross-referenced them with known alien languages. Alex coordinated security measures, ensuring the lab remained protected from any potential threats. Meanwhile, Daniel poured all his energy into perfecting ZEUS, knowing it might be their only chance to confront whatever awaited them. As the days stretched into weeks, the pressure mounted. Supplies dwindled, forcing the team to ration food and water. Arguments broke out over minor issues, fraying tempers. Yet through it all they held on to hope that ZEUS would work, hope that humanity could rise above its mistakes, and hope that somehow they could find a way to break free from the veil. Finally, the day arrived when ZEUS was ready. Its components gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, a testament to months of relentless effort. Daniel stood before it, his chest swelling with pride and apprehension. "This is it," he said, addressing the team. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this." Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady. "Are we sure about this? Once we activate it, there's no turning back." Daniel met her gaze. "We don't have a choice. If we don't try, we lose everything." Claire nodded, her expression resolute. "Let's do it." Alex gave a grim smile. "Then let's make history." Together they prepared for deployment. The plan was risky, requiring them to transport ZEUS to a precise location along the veil's perimeter. Armed with portable shielding units and guided by Daniel's calculations, they set out into the unknown. The journey ahead would test their courage, ingenuity, and resolve, but failure was not an option. As they loaded the equipment onto a transport vehicle, Daniel took one last look at the lab. It had been their sanctuary, their battleground, and their home. Now, it was time to leave it behind. With a deep breath, he climbed aboard, joining the others. Together they drove toward destiny, ready to face whatever lay beyond the veil. The journey to the deployment site was anything but smooth. The transport vehicle rumbled over cracked highways and through abandoned cities, its headlights cutting through the thick haze that had settled over Earth. The air outside was toxic, forcing everyone to wear breathing masks whenever they stepped out. Inside the vehicle, the mood was tense. Daniel Carter sat in the passenger seat, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of danger. Behind him, Rachel Monroe reviewed maps on a tablet, her finger tracing their route. Alex Turner drove, his hands gripping the wheel tightly as he navigated the treacherous terrain. Claire Bennett and Sophie Grant, a medic who had joined the team, sat in the back, checking equipment and ensuring everything was ready. "We're getting close," Rachel said after a long silence. "About 10 kilometers from the target zone." Daniel nodded but didn't respond. His mind was racing, replaying every calculation, every test they'd run on ZEUS. He knew the risks. Failure could mean disaster, but success was their only hope. The veil loomed ahead, visible even from miles away. Its glowing surface pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of some massive, otherworldly creature. As they approached the outskirts of what used to be Chicago, the road became impassable. Piles of rubble blocked their path, forcing them to abandon the vehicle and continue on foot. They strapped on portable oxygen tanks and shouldered their gear, moving cautiously through the desolate streets. Buildings stood like skeletal remains, their windows shattered and walls crumbling. The wind carried an eerie howl, mixing with the distant rumble of thunder. It felt like the city itself was mourning its fate. "Stay alert," Alex warned, his voice low. "If the Kryn are watching, they'll know we're here." No one needed reminding. The drones, the mechanical sentinels the Kryn had sent through the veil, were everywhere. Sleek, insect-like machines with razor-sharp limbs and glowing red eyes, they patrolled the skies and scoured the ground for any sign of resistance. One wrong move, and they'd be swarmed. They moved quickly, sticking to shadows and avoiding open areas. At one point, Sophie froze, pointing toward a nearby alley. A drone hovered there, its sensors scanning the area. Everyone held their breath, pressing themselves against the wall as it passed overhead. When it finally moved on, Alex let out a quiet sigh of relief. "That was too close," he muttered. After hours of careful maneuvering, they reached the deployment site, a wide open field surrounded by ruins. In the distance, the veil shimmered ominously, its energy field crackling faintly. This was it, the weakest point along the veil's equator, where its energy signature fluctuated just enough to give ZEUS a fighting chance. "Set up the perimeter," Daniel instructed, his voice firm despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "We need to move fast." Alex and Claire began assembling portable shielding units around the area, creating a temporary barrier to protect them from potential attacks. Rachel helped Daniel unpack ZEUS, carefully positioning it at the center of the site. Sophie kept watch, her rifle ready in case the drones returned. As they worked, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Everyone froze, exchanging worried glances. "What was that?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the sky lit up with blinding flashes of light. A massive shadow descended from above a Kryn warship, larger than anything they'd seen before. Its sleek, obsidian surface reflected the glow of the veil, and its underside bristled with weapons. The ship hovered silently, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "They found us," Alex said grimly, raising his weapon. "Take cover." The team scrambled behind the shielding units as beams of energy lanced down from the ship, striking the ground with explosive force. Dirt and debris flew everywhere, forcing them to shield their faces. The shields absorbed most of the impact, but cracks began forming in the protective barriers. "We can't hold them off forever." Rachel shouted over the chaos, "We need to activate ZEUS now." Daniel hesitated, torn between fear and determination. Activating ZEUS prematurely could destabilize it, but waiting any longer might cost them their lives. "Do it," he said finally. "Start the sequence." Claire rushed to ZEUS, her fingers flying over the controls. Lights blinked rapidly as the device powered up, emitting a low hum that grew louder with each passing second. The Kryn ship seemed to sense the threat, shifting its focus to the device. A massive beam of energy shot down, aimed directly at ZEUS. "No." Daniel yelled, lunging forward to shield the device with his body. At the last moment, Alex tackled him out of the way, narrowly avoiding the blast. The ground where Daniel had been standing erupted in flames. "Keep going!" Alex barked at Claire, firing his weapon at the drones that had begun descending from the ship. Sophie joined him, her shots precise and deadly. One by one, the drones fell, but more kept coming. Rachel knelt beside Daniel, helping him to his feet. "You okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I'm fine," he replied, though his hands were shaking. "Just finish this." Claire worked frantically, her heart pounding as alarms blared from ZEUS. Something wasn't right. The energy readings were spiking dangerously high. She realized with growing dread that activating the device would unleash far more power than intended. But there was no time to recalibrate. Either they risked it or they died trying. "Almost there," Claire called out, her voice strained. 30 seconds. The Kryn ship unleashed another barrage of attacks, this time targeting the shielding units. One of the barriers collapsed, leaving the team exposed. A drone swooped in, its claws extended. Alex fired at it, hitting it square in the chest. The machine crashed to the ground, sparking violently. 20 seconds. Claire shouted, sweat dripping down her face. Sophie spotted movement out of the corner of her eye, a group of drones closing in from behind. She turned to fire, but one of them struck first, sending her sprawling to the ground. Blood seeped from a gash on her arm, but she gritted her teeth and kept fighting, refusing to give up. 10 seconds. Claire yelled, her voice breaking. "Hold them off." Daniel grabbed a fallen piece of debris and hurled it at an approaching drone, buying Claire precious moments. Rachel crouched beside Sophie, applying pressure to her wound while keeping an eye on the battlefield. Finally, Claire hit the activation button. ZEUS roared to life, its core glowing brighter than the sun. A surge of energy erupted outward, spreading in all directions. The drones disintegrated instantly, reduced to ash. The Kryn ship shuddered violently, its weapon systems failing as the energy wave engulfed it. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, with a deafening crack, the veil shattered. As the dust settled, the team stared in awe at the sight before them. Where the veil had once stood, stars now twinkled brightly in the night sky. Earth was free, but something else stirred within the void. A presence, ancient and powerful, emerged from the remnants of the veil. It took the form of a swirling mass of light, pulsating with energy. The entity radiated warmth and curiosity, yet also an overwhelming sense of agelessness. "What is that?" Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel shook his head, equally stunned. "I don't know, but it's not the Kryn." The entity spoke not with words, but with feelings. Images flooded their minds, memories of creation, destruction, and rebirth. It identified itself as Eos, a being imprisoned eons ago by the Kryn, trapped within the veil. It had waited patiently for release, sustained only by the faint echoes of humanity's struggles. "You freed me," Eos communicated, its thoughts resonating deeply within them. "For that I am grateful." Alex lowered his weapon, his expression wary but hopeful. "Grateful enough to help us?" Eos responded with a surge of emotion that translated simply as yes. It offered humanity knowledge and technology far beyond their understanding, promising to guide them toward a new era of peace and prosperity. But it also warned of challenges ahead the Kryn would not forgive. This act of defiance easily as the team stood together beneath the newly revealed stars, a mixture of relief and apprehension washed over them. They had succeeded in breaking the veil, but their journey was far from over. With Eos's guidance, humanity would step onto the galactic stage, ready to forge alliances and face whatever threats lay ahead. For Daniel, the weight of responsibility still lingered, but for the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Earth had been given a second chance, and he vowed to ensure it wouldn't be wasted. The aftermath of the veil's destruction left the team in stunned silence. The glowing entity known as Eos hovered above them, its light casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, radiating warmth that stood in stark contrast to the cold, toxic air surrounding them. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply stared, trying to process what they had just witnessed, and what now faced them. Daniel Carter was the first to break the quiet. What happens next? He asked aloud, though his question seemed directed more at Eos than anyone else. Eos responded not with words, but with images and sensations flooding their minds. Visions of distant stars, alien civilizations, and worlds teeming with life filled their thoughts. Alongside these hopeful scenes came darker ones, images of war, oppression, and the Kryn's vast empire stretching across galaxies. Through it all, Eos conveyed a single message: humanity was free. But freedom came with responsibility. "We can't undo what's been done," Rachel Monroe said softly, her voice trembling. "The Kryn will come for us?" Alex Turner nodded. Grimly, "They won't take this lying down." Freeing Eos might have made things worse. Claire Bennett stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the glowing entity. "But we're not alone anymore. Eos is with us." "Maybe that's enough." Sophie Grant, still nursing her injured arm, managed a weak smile. "It'll have to be—" Eos lingered for a few moments longer before beginning to fade, its light dimming until it vanished entirely. Yet its presence remained, a faint hum in the back of their minds. It promised to return when needed, leaving humanity to navigate the uncertain future on its own. For now, the journey back to the lab was somber. The team trudged through the ruins of Chicago, their footsteps echoing in the eerie stillness. The sky above was clearer than it had been in months, revealing stars that hadn't been visible since the veil descended. But instead of comfort, the sight brought unease. Earth was exposed once again, vulnerable to whatever forces lay beyond. As they reached the outskirts of the city, Daniel paused, looking up at the heavens. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "We didn't have a choice. Staying locked away would have meant extinction. At least now we have a chance." "A slim one," Alex muttered under his breath. He scanned the horizon, his rifle ready. Despite Eos's assurances, he couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked nearby. When they finally returned to the lab, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. Supplies were running dangerously low, and the facility itself showed signs of wear from weeks of constant use. Equipment malfunctioned frequently, and power shortages forced them to ration electricity. Morale was at an all-time low. Despite the challenges, Daniel refused to let despair take hold. "We need to prepare," he said, addressing the group. "If the Kryn come, we need to be ready." "For what?" Claire asked bitterly. "ZEUS is gone. We don't have another miracle weapon." "Then we make one," Daniel replied firmly. "Eos gave us knowledge. We'll use it to build something even better." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to analyze the information Eos had shared, fragments of alien technology, and data flooded their systems, offering insights into advanced engineering, energy manipulation, and interstellar travel. It was overwhelming but also exhilarating. For the first time, humanity had access to tools and ideas far beyond its previous understanding. Rachel took charge of decoding the data, her expertise in astrophysics proving invaluable. She discovered blueprints for devices capable of generating protective shields around entire cities. These shields could repel attacks from Kryn drones and ships, giving humanity a fighting chance if war erupted. Claire focused on adapting the designs for practical use, modifying them to work with Earth's limited resources. Her hands moved quickly over keyboards and circuit boards, assembling prototypes that hummed with alien energy. Each success brought a small spark of hope to the weary team. Meanwhile, Alex coordinated defensive strategies, training volunteers who had joined their cause. Refugees from nearby shelters offered their skills, eager to contribute to humanity's survival. Among them was Ethan Cole, a former engineer whose sharp mind and steady hands made him an asset. Together, they fortified the lab and surrounding areas, turning it into a stronghold against potential threats. Sophie tended to the wounded, her medical expertise saving lives despite the harsh conditions. She often worked late into the night, stitching wounds and administering makeshift treatments. Though her injury slowed her down, she refused to let it stop her. Her determination inspired others to keep pushing forward. As progress continued, news spread about the Veil's destruction. Survivors across the globe tuned in to emergency broadcasts, learning of humanity's newfound freedom and the risks that came with it. Some celebrated, while others feared retaliation from the Kryn. Riots broke out in cities where supplies were scarce, and tensions rose between factions vying for control. Amidst the chaos, leaders convened to discuss Earth's future. Representatives from surviving nations gathered in secret, debating how to unite humanity under a single banner. Many called for peace and cooperation, urging alliances with other species EOS had hinted at. Others advocated for military buildup, believing strength was the only way to survive. Daniel attended one such meeting. Accompanied by Rachel and Alex, they presented their findings, showcasing the potential of the technology EOS had provided. Leaders listened intently, their expressions a mix of awe and skepticism. Some questioned whether humanity was ready for such power, while others saw it as a lifeline worth grasping. "We don't have time to debate ethics," Daniel argued passionately. "The Kryn are coming. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." His words struck a chord. Slowly but surely, plans began taking shape. Resources were pooled, efforts coordinated, and strategies aligned. Humanity started rebuilding, not just physically, but socially and politically. Old rivalries faded in the face of a common enemy, replaced by fragile but growing unity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel found himself standing outside the lab. The air was cleaner now, thanks to EOS's influence, and the stars shone brightly overhead. He thought about how far they'd come and how much farther they still had to go. Rachel joined him, her arms crossed against the cool breeze. "You look lost," she said gently. "I am," Daniel admitted. "We've done so much, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface." "What if it's not enough?" "It has to be," Rachel replied. "Because giving up isn't an option?" Daniel smiled faintly. "When did you get so wise?" Rachel chuckled. "Someone has to keep you grounded." They stood together in silence, watching the sky. Despite the uncertainty ahead, there was a sense of hope, a belief that humanity could rise to meet whatever challenges lay in store. With EOS's guidance and their own resilience, they had taken the first steps toward a new chapter in Earth's history. Unbeknownst to them, however, the Kryn were already mobilizing. Across the galaxy, fleets amassed, preparing for a campaign unlike any seen before. Their leader, Vorthax, seethed with anger at the loss of the Veil and the release of EOS. Humanity had defied them once, but they wouldn't dare do so again. As the stars twinkled above, casting their light on Earth's scarred surface, the stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of billions. The battle lines were drawn, and neither side was willing to back down. For humanity, the fight for survival and freedom was just beginning. The first sign of the Kryn's retaliation came without warning. It began with a faint hum in the atmosphere, growing louder and more ominous with each passing second. The team was inside the lab, working late into the night when the sound reached. Then Daniel Carter paused mid-sentence, his head snapping up. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice tense. Everyone froze. Claire Bennett dropped the tool she was holding, her eyes darting toward the window. Outside, the sky glowed faintly, as if lit by an unseen fire. Then streaks of light appeared, dozens of ships descending from orbit, their sleek forms cutting through the darkness like blades. The Kryn had arrived. "They're here," Alex Turner said grimly, grabbing his rifle. "Get to the shields." The team scrambled into action, activating the protective barriers they had built using EOS's designs. The shields shimmered into existence around the lab, forming a translucent dome that crackled with energy. Moments later, beams of light rained down from the Kryn ships, striking the barrier with explosive force. The ground shook violently and alarms blared throughout the facility. "We can't hold them off forever!" Rachel Monroe shouted over the chaos. She rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls. "We need to buy ourselves time." "Time for what?" Sophie Grant yelled, clutching her injured arm as she helped reinforce the shield generators. Her face was pale but determined. "For this," Daniel replied, pulling up a holographic display on the central workstation. On the screen was a map of Earth, dotted with red markers indicating locations where similar shield systems were being deployed. Thanks to the knowledge shared by EOS, humanity had managed to establish defensive networks across key regions. But these shields were untested against the full might of the Kryn fleet. As the bombardment intensified, Ethan Cole ran into the room, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "The east generator is failing," he shouted. "If it goes down, the whole shield collapses?" "I'll fix it," Claire volunteered, already heading for the door. "Cover me." Alex nodded and motioned for Sophie and two others to follow. "Claire," they moved quickly, dodging debris and returning fire at drones that swooped down from above. The air outside was thick with smoke and ash, making it hard to see. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through the area inside. The lab, Daniel worked frantically to stabilize the shield's energy output. Rachel monitored incoming data, relaying updates to the field teams. "Claire's almost there," she called out. "But the Kryn are targeting her position." Daniel clenched his jaw, his hands trembling as he adjusted the controls. "Hold on, Claire," he muttered under his breath. "Just a little longer." Out in the field, Claire knelt beside the failing generator, her hands moving swiftly as she rewired damaged components. Behind her, Sophie and the others formed a defensive line, firing at approaching drones. A blast struck nearby, throwing Claire off balance. She fell to the ground, her ears ringing from the impact. "Claire?" Sophie shouted, turning to check. On her, before she could move, another drone lunged forward, its claws slicing through the air. Sophie fired instinctively, hitting the machine square in the chest. It exploded in a shower of sparks, but more took its place. "I'm okay," Claire yelled, climbing back to her feet. She wiped blood from her forehead and returned to the generator. "Almost done." A sudden burst of static filled the air, followed by a voice not human, but unmistakably familiar. It was Vorthak's, leader of the Kryn. His tone was cold and commanding, reverberating in their minds rather than their ears. "You have defied us once too often, humans. Your rebellion ends now." Claire ignored the message, focusing all her attention on the generator. With one final adjustment, the device roared back to life, stabilizing the shield just as another wave of attacks crashed against it. The team cheered, relief washing over them despite the ongoing battle. Back inside the lab, Daniel let out a shaky breath. "They did it," he said, slumping into a chair. "The shield's holding for now." Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not over yet. Look." She pointed to the monitors where new readings indicated something. Massive approaching. A colossal ship emerged from the Kryn fleet, dwarfing the others in size. Its surface gleamed like polished obsidian, and its weapons systems glowed ominously. This was no ordinary vessel, it was Vorthax's flagship. "They're bringing out the big guns," Alex said, joining them. "What's the plan?" Daniel stood, his expression resolute. "We fight. We've come too far to give up now." The battle raged on for hours, each side pushing their limits. The Kryn launched relentless assaults, testing the strength of the shields while deploying waves of drones and ground troops. Inside the lab, the team coordinated efforts with other resistance groups, sharing strategies and resources. Humanity's unity, forged in desperation, proved stronger than anyone expected. EOS reappeared during the fiercest moments of combat, its radiant form materializing above the battlefield. Without words, it communicated a single directive: trust in yourselves. With a surge of energy, it bolstered the shields, reinforcing them against the Kryn's relentless barrage. For the first time, the tide began to turn. Encouraged by EOS's support, Daniel devised a daring counterattack. Using modified versions of ZEUS's technology, they created portable EMP devices capable of disabling Kryn ships. Teams armed with these devices infiltrated enemy lines, targeting critical points in the fleet. One by one, the Kryn vessels faltered, their systems overwhelmed by the unexpected assault. Vorthax watched from his flagship, his frustration mounting. Humanity's resilience defied logic. They should have been crushed easily. Yet here they stood, fighting back with ingenuity and courage. He ordered a full retreat, unwilling to risk further losses. As the remaining ships ascended into orbit and disappeared from view, the battlefield fell silent. When the dust settled, the survivors emerged from their shelters, blinking in disbelief at the clear sky above. The Kryn were gone for now. Cheers erupted across Earth as news of the victory spread. Refugees who had hidden underground ventured out cautiously, their faces lighting up with hope. For the first time in years, the future seemed possible. In the lab, the team gathered around. Daniel, their exhaustion giving way to cautious optimism. "We won," Rachel said softly, tears welling in her eyes. "Against all odds, we actually won." Daniel smiled, though his expression remained serious. "This isn't the end. The Kryn will be back. But today we showed them that humanity isn't so easy to break," Alex nodded. "And next time we'll be ready." Claire hugged Sophie tightly, grateful they had made it through alive. "We couldn't have done it without EOS," she said, looking skyward. The entity's presence lingered faintly, a reminder of the bond between humans and the ancient being they had freed. Over the following weeks, Earth began to rebuild. Cities rose from the ashes, powered by EOS's advanced technology. Nations set aside old grudges, working together to create a global coalition aimed at protecting their planet and exploring the stars beyond. Embassies opened to welcome representatives from alien civilizations eager to forge alliances with humanity. As Daniel stood on a hill overlooking the recovering world, he felt a mix of pride and responsibility. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, but also vulnerable to mistakes. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time, they faced it as one people. Rachel joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The future," Daniel replied. "It's scary, but I think we can handle it," Rachel smiled. "Together we can handle anything." Behind them, the stars twinkled brightly, a symbol of endless possibilities. Earth had stepped onto the galactic stage, ready to carve out its place among the cosmos. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would meet them with courage, unity, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest spark could ignite change. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of EOS and the vast expanse of space, a new era dawned for Earth, an era defined not by fear or oppression, but by hope and determination.